This is Joe Pugh for IFLTV. Delighted to be joined over Zoom on this Tuesday morning. A
Chilly
man,
Tuesday.
it
Chilly
is
Tuesday.
chilly. It is chilly, Gareth. No paddle boarding for you anymore, right?
There's normally a couple of occasions in October when I get on the board, but rivers more than sea, because you even with the dry suit, you don't really want to get too wet at this time of year. Once it's down to about under 12 degrees, no chance, And I think it's about 10 degrees today, and there's a brisk wind. And as I've said to a couple of other mates this morning, the I can see the birds beginning to fly south across the autumn skies. And once you see that, you know that we're into that period of it getting darker. Last night was the first time I noticed it's getting darker earlier, to be honest.
It is getting dark. It is, yeah, I think about 7:30 now. It's getting dark. It's not nice to see, really, is it? We like the long days.
We like the sunshine, baby.
We do. We do. Right. Whilst people would love us to talk about the weather for a half hour, we've got boxing to speak about. It's been a bit of a quiet week since the press conference, Gareth. But last night we got another press conference in Gervonta Tank Davis and Jake Paul. Did you watch any of that?
I've watched all of it. Yeah,
What did you make of
absolutely.
it?
Well, I mean, Jake Paul did his act, and he had nothing to dance with. There wasn't any opposition, so it was like a man screaming at an opponent in an empty room, wasn't it? I mean, he might as well have done the press conference on his own because Shaka Stevenson was a bit like you on a. It's West Ham, you are, aren't you?
Yeah.
Imagine if you wanted to go and see the big West Ham game, but your girl had dragged you to the shopping centre. She dragged you to a big shopping centre on a Saturday afternoon. You couldn't get any reception for your phone, and you couldn't watch the game. You'd be walking around a little bit like a bit like Gervonta Davis was looking on the press conference. He looked like a man that should have been lined up to face Shaka Stevenson. That's why it was in my mind, because that's the fight we want to see him in, not a kind of carnival fight with Jake Paul, who's going to be 60 pounds heavier than him. 10 3-minute rounds, 12-ounce gloves, exhibition bout, yet with judges. Honestly, normally I can close my eyes and see how the silhouettes move together. This is a really odd one when you think about it. Really odd fight. And Jake Paul may end up not laying a glove on Gervonta Davis.
What happens if Jake Paul knocks him out, though?
Well, it's catastrophic for Gervonta, really.
Is it possible?
Uh, of course, it's possible, but it, as we saw yesterday at the press conference, you could call Tank Davis defensive, wasn't he, yesterday? And I think he'll be very careful and very defensive against Jake Paul. It might be a very boring fight.
What do you think needs to happen in this fight in order for an Anthony Joshua fight, which I know you're against, but Eddie Hearn said he would still make.
Well, I think even at the press conference when they spoke to people afterwards, they revealed that they're still in talks
Mm.
to make that fight happen. Again, I don't agree with it on the grounds that you know I think Gervonta Davis is fairly safe in there against Jake Paul. I don't think he's going to get snaffled on the ropes and beaten up. Um, Whereas I think Anthony Joshua against Jake Paul is a dangerous fight for Jake Paul. I don't see him lasting very long against Anthony Joshua. Um, I think that fight may well happen, unless we get Joshua and Fury signed before that happens. And there are talks, as you probably know, going on behind the scenes. Although it's gone a bit quiet in the last week or two, even though my scouts out there patrolling were telling me that they are seriously talking about it. It wouldn't surprise me if Jake Paul did end up fighting Canelo as well, by the way, which came close recently. Of all of them, that's probably the most intriguing because Canelo's loading up with single shots, and can Jake Paul take them? Um, so it's a bizarre scenario, and I don't think Jake Paul and boxing's got that much longer to play out, if I'm honest. Two, three fights maximum, in my view. Yes, he could have he's a little bit too big, but he could have a fight with KSI that would kind of work for their marketplace, all their subscribers. That probably will happen at some point if they feel like it. But yeah, it's a very bizarre run, isn't it? It's a very bizarre series but it's the Jake Paul show. So he's hijacked boxing. He's got it on a platform. He's doing his good works on the other side of it with women's boxing, and he brings eyeballs to the sport. If his boxing can be called sport.
Just on Anthony Joshua, Gareth, I think Sunday marked the year anniversary of his fight against Daniel Dubois. It marks the longest period in his professional career that we haven't seen him in the ring. I know he had his operation. Do you feel like the sport needs him to return, if he is to return, which we
Yeah,
understand he is?
he's very good for the sport. There's no doubt about that. I did know it was a year because the Ring Magazine rankings, in which I'm part of a very large group on the rankings panel, um, have opted to drop him out of the top 10 because he's been out a year, and obviously bring in. I haven't looked it up. I think they were talking about bringing F.A. Jagba in or Lawrence Okoli. I can't remember who it is now. Who's gone in there? I can look it up right now. Actually, who's gone in it?
I think it might have been a Jagba, Gareth.
Yeah, it might be a Jagba. I remember the discussions on email. Um, um, Yeah, I think boxing does miss him. We certainly miss him on this side of the pond. The Americans don't miss him, but because they don't really register Joshua in the American market very much. Um, but we certainly miss him, and we should have had Fury and Joshua this year. It's a wasted 12 months in my view for him. Obviously, he's got the injury sorted out. He's been enjoying his life. That's plain to see. Um, but he's been in the sport a long time. If you think about all the way from 2009, um, you know, 15, 16 years in the full glare of attention since he came to our knowledge as a guy that did well in the World Amateur Championships as a finalist, and then the Olympic gold, and then he's been a household name and a very big name globally ever since then. So it'd be great to see him back. I do think we miss him like we've missed Tyson Fury. I think I've said it to you before. I think it's the first time in 14 years that neither man has fought in a ring in an entire calendar year. So, yeah, I think they're big figures. They're big characters in the sport. They're big pieces on the chessboard. So we do miss them.
Eddie Hearn's words, he'll fight in January or February, then in the summer, he'll roll the dice. Um, if that roll of the dice isn't Tyson Fury, what fight is it for Anthony Joshua?
Well, I think he should have fought Deontay Wilder, and I'd like to see that fight have taken place. Could that be the fight in January or February in Nigeria or in Ghana as they're talking? I think it's a great thing for Anthony to fight in Africa. Obviously, his heritage is there. I think it would do massive numbers in Africa at a time when there's an interest in developing the sport there, developing the business of the sport there as well in both countries. I think it's a great thing. It's a huge untapped market, and I think it'll be a riveting success. Obviously Fury is a gamble for him because it's bookends an era, and I still think Fury, even though they're both probably in the latter part of their careers, they both probably only got one or two fights left. I still think Fury's the favourite in that fight. And obviously that leaves the bragging rights for the era if he loses that. But I'm not sure who the other opponent will be. We've obviously mentioned Jake Paul, which is a kind of carnival fight. But I think Deontay Wilder's the other guy that he should face. That in my view, I don't see anyone else out there. I don't see a rematch with Daniel Dubois particularly. I can't imagine him relishing that, even though, again, if he was on top in the fight, you could see him doing well. But we've all got the optics of those 5 rounds from a year ago, as it was just over a year ago. Seems incredible that that was over a year ago, in fact, um, because obviously that was a huge night at Wembley, wasn't it? It was an absolutely enormous night where things didn't go right for him, and he obviously needed to recover mentally, emotionally, and clearly with the operation physically.
If Fury and AJ weren't to fight each other and their careers ended now, in years to come, who would have left the biggest legacy in heavyweight boxing? Gareth?
I think Tyson Fury, and people will call me a Fury fanboy for saying that, but I think Fury, the trilogy of fights with Wilder were just incredible. The comeback from being 28 stone was unbelievable. Um, but there's another side, which is what Anthony Joshua and Eddie Hearn were to the build of British boxing and stadium fights in that period between, I want to say, 2015, 2019. The Joshua Klitschko night at Wembley was one of the most incredible nights I've ever been at boxing, probably in my top five, on a personal level, just for the size of the occasion, the way the thing built, the crossover appeal, the fight itself, which was unbelievable. You were probably still at school then, weren't you? In year six or something, year seven.
The Klitschko fight, Gareth.
Yeah,
I was in, what was it, 2017?
yeah.
Year eight.
Do you remember it though?
Yeah, of course I remember
It
it.
was big, wasn't it?
It was
It
massive.
crossed over. It crossed over, didn't it?
It was
You know?
massive, Gareth.
Yeah, it was massive. It really. I remember going on BBC Radio 4 in the morning to talk about why it was so big and what the crossover appeal was. Um, and then, it had crossed over into the political programs even. It was an enormous event, and it feels like a different era. I know it's only 8 years ago, but it just feels like a different era. As I say, you were a teenager then, and it was still, it was one of the major sporting occasions of the decade. So, in answer to your question, I mean, I think in boxing terms, I think Fury, but in kind of wider resonance, Fury's done extraordinarily well as a boxer and as a business, but and obviously the Netflix series, the documentaries that have been made about his two fights with Alexander Usyk. I think he's the number two of the era, Fury, and I think Joshua. You could argue he's number three of the era, but it's been a tough passage the last 3 or 4 years for him.
Right. Does this fight happen? Does Fury and
Yes,
AJ happen next
yes,
year?
yes,
You was
yes.
doubtful before. What's changed?
Um, well, because I've been talking to people behind the scenes that it's being discussed, um, but I mean it shouldn't be too difficult to discuss. It should be it should be nailed down by now. We should have an announcement on it, in my view, even if they say it's going to happen in the summer next year. book Wembley Stadium, get it sorted out. I hope it doesn't go to Saudi Arabia. Doesn't really belong there, even though it may end up there as well. There is a possibility of that. I'm hearing. Um, but I just think both men will regret not fighting each other. Maybe not in 3 years' time, in 5 years' time, but in 10 years' time, they will regret that they never fought each other, monetarily as well as in sporting terms.
Okay, just to move away from the heavyweight kind of talk, Gareth, I want to just go back to last week with the Ben Eubank press conferences.
Yeah.
Am I right in saying you spoke to Robert Smith?
I did. I spoke to him in the tail end of last week, and the quotes were used on TalkSport, and then they've been circulated widely, haven't they? Um, that he's unhappy about the things that Chris Eubank said, unhappy about learning if about the allegations of the ambulance being detained or withheld for 20 minutes. That won't have sat well with him, and I'm sure he's having a full investigation into that. Because Chris Eubank was accusing whoever it was he was accusing, because he didn't, you lot, your side, delayed the ambulance from leaving for 20 minutes. You were there, weren't you, for
Yeah.
that? I mean, it was chaos outside, wasn't it? So whether we'll find out. I can't surmise what the reason was, but it doesn't make any sense to me that they would have held an ambulance up for any reason whatsoever. But obviously that needs investigating. And then, Robert Smith was unhappy about the comments that Chris Eubank was making about the board as well, about how they use funds from fines, which, again, I've said it several times. Chris was playing victim and villain at the same time last week at the press conference. He was selling the event. He was talking about sabotage against him the whole way through, from Billy Joe Saunders being sent to his dressing room, from sabotage at the weigh-in that he claimed, the gloves themselves with horsehair that he complained about. The rehydration clause. So as I say, he was playing the victim, even though he won 8 rounds to 4, and he's turned up for the rematch where he's probably going to earn 10 million again. So I don't think they're going to give him an inch. The other side, I think they're going to try and press gang him into making 160, probably with a rehydration clause of 10 pounds again. Even though my belief is he should be able to go over that.
You said to me last week we may see an apology. He may have to apologise, and I think a lot of
Oh,
people.
I was wrong about that. I need to correct myself. On Ricky Hatton, you mean?
No, not on Ricky Hatton, on
Apparently he
the
did
accusations.
apologise. I
Yeah,
wanted to clarify that because I'm not sure who I gave an interview to last week, but I didn't realise that he'd put out a tribute to Ricky Hatton
yeah,
afterwards. I don't want to do Chris a disservice here in
no.
any way, shape, or form, because he's a very respectful man in all ways. I mean, I think he plays the heel at press conferences. I've known Chris a long time. I'm a huge advocate of what he's done in the sport. I'm not one of those people that says, "Oh, he's not world level" and all of these things. He's world level in everything he does, apart from the fact that he hasn't held one of the 4 belts as a world champion. But I think he's got all those qualities. No, because I said last week I thought it was ill-advised of him
Mm.
to shut Eddie Hearn down while he was talking in a tribute about Ricky Hatton after we'd seen the montage. But at the same time, in retrospect, maybe Eddie Hearn had planned to say that as well, as if he was being Machiavellian about it, because he knew Chris was going to shut him down. So it's what's apart from his critique of other people, he hasn't been made to make an apology as he did last time when he was calling
Mm.
Frank Warren and the other promoters scumbags. He called Robert Smith a scumbag on
Yeah,
this occasion, didn't he?
that's what I was alluding to, Gareth.
Oh, I see. But the boards, they don't respond in the same way. As I think we know now, the he was made to apologise last time by the people that were backing the fight. So he came out and made an apology a couple of hours later, but it also averted legal action with Frank Warren, didn't it? So, who's had legal action and won it in the past with him. It's all complex. It's all the politics of boxing and the business of the Wild West, as we call it. But look, the bottom line is he created a lot of headlines around the event last week, and it needed it because without him, this fight needs to sell a little bit. They're calling it unfinished business, but I think the business was finished after the first fight. In reality, in terms of boxing, does Eubank win again? Yeah, I think he probably does in a similar fashion to last time.
Yeah, well, we got quite the opposite of an apology, didn't we? We got a video in good humour with Turki Al Sheikh. What did you think of that video?
I think um, I think Chris Eubank was very, very um, magnanimous towards Turki Al Sheikh. You know, it was like he was with his best friend and promoter, which is, you know, he's clearly very grateful for what Turki Al Sheikh's done for him and doing for him right now.
After the first fight, Gareth, there was a lot of discussions of potentially him, as in Chris Eubank Jr., fighting Canelo. Should Canelo beat Terence Crawford? That fight may still be there.
Mm.
But do you still believe after this rematch against Conor Benn, should he beat him for the second time, he gets one of those super fights?
He doesn't need it anymore after this fight. But Chris has an eye on the big pot of gold. So it wouldn't surprise me if he's pushing for it. I don't think he wants to fight Hamza Shiraz, which I think is a difficult fight for him. And I think he will probably circumvent Hamza Shiraz and try and get a Canelo fight. It doesn't surprise me at all. And if he looks very convincing and he's got and he wins in similar fashion this time, or even stops Conor Benn. I'm not sure he stops Conor Benn, but he knows what he's up against this time. That's the difference, and he should prepare accordingly. I'm not ruling out Conor Benn pulling off the improbable, but I do think we get the same thing again. And if he looks very impressive, it wouldn't surprise me to see Turki Al Sheikh back in fighting Canelo. And it wouldn't surprise me to see Canelo have a fight at Wembley Stadium because I think it would sell out. And Eubank's a big enough name to fight Saul Canelo Alvarez. But then again, it wouldn't surprise me to see Canelo have a rematch with Terence Crawford after all the dust has settled as well. Because who does Crawford fight next?
Could we
I'm
see
not
Eubank
sure.
Crawford?
No, I don't. I don't. But I can see Turki Al Sheikh trying to get Crawford to fight Benavidez at 12 stone at 168. But I think that's a fight that Crawford needs to be slightly wary of because there are weight divisions for a reason. Stylistically, I mean, I'm one of the ones who called for Canelo versus or Crawford versus Canelo as a fancy fight when he beat Errol Spence because Crawford looked so brilliant. I thought he'd be capable of taking on Canelo. Obviously, it's 2 years later. Canelo is a single punch merchant now with slower feet, whose style and age was exposed by Terence Crawford, taking nothing away from the brilliance of his performance. But the matchmaking was very good for now. And that's how I saw the fight going initially. But then I swayed back and wobbled to Canelo in the last couple of weeks. But I'm delighted for Terence Crawford that he did it. I think we've got a modern great on our hands, and an all-time great, same as with Neuer, Nui, and Alexander Usyk. I think we've got three all-time greats in our midst at the moment. So I could see Canelo and Crawford doing it again. I could see Canelo and Chris Eubank, but I couldn't see. I could have seen Canelo and Hamza Shiraz. Maybe still see that. Um, it'll all depend on how they figure it all out. Look, they haven't even figured out Joshua and Fury yet. So, you know, Turkey Al Sheikh needs to wave that magic wand again. Um, and once it comes up with the right amount of money, I think all these fights fall into place.
We do love that magic wand as
We do, we
people
do.
working in boxing and people as fight fans. Gareth, I think that covers just about anything, everything. Is there anything else you want to kind of get off your chest on this chilly Tuesday morning?
Nothing at all. I'm just ready to rock the rest of the season. It's going to be a great end. Last three months of the year for boxing look brilliant. There's so many great events to be at, and also one final thing I'll get off my chest. I hugged it out with John and Johnny Fisher in
Did you?
Vegas at the at the weigh-ins. I ran into them by chance and we had a big hug out. So there we go.
Good man.
Stay tuned for more. There could be a Chinese coming up soon.
Oh, that'd be pay-per-view, that would. Oh yeah, I see your little jovial dig at Simon Jordan on Saturday night as well, Gareth.
Did I have a dig at Simon Jordan?
Yeah, you even admitted it. It was all in good jest, but you was like, it was good to have you had John Treffer and Mark Nielsen in, and you said it was good to have them in the studio without Simon Jordan. Do you remember that one?
No. I mentioned something about him tub thumping, I think.
There you go. There you go. Well, I love that. I
He
love
does a
that.
great job for Talksport
He
on the
does do
box.
a great job. I know it was all in good jest. I know you and Simon love a little push and a pull, don't you, verbally over radio? But it's all good fun, isn't it?
Stop causing trouble, Joe Pugh.
Gareth, thank you very much for speaking to IFLTV. Enjoy the
You're
rest of your
welcome.
day, and
You're
we'll
welcome.
catch up next week at some point.
See you later. Cheers, Joe.